I'm the sober living now in San Antonio, Texas. And boy, I've been here in Texas for about 6.5 years. And it's been a rough ride. Rough ride. I'm talking about when you move to a big place like Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, and you're homeless, you fall to where broke people at. You fall to where all the drugs is at. You fall into where all the people who are struggling at. But some things cross my mind that I can't forget. I remember when me and my brother was young, me and my brother Wayne, my real brother, and my dad was Air Force. You know, we were Air Force brats. You know, I got a little discrepancy about the brat part because we kept getting our butt whipped. But I remember we used to always jump inside his big old shoes and put on his big old Air Force jacket, suit jacket. And we used to just marvelize at the stripes on the side of the coat jacket, the blue star, and he had that name tag on, Hancock. And we used to run around the house. Shoes were so big and loud, Mom used to scream, "Y'all better stop making all that noise. Take them doggone shoes off." And she used to get in the dresser drawer, and she had this big, giant trash bag full of Polaroid pictures. And we used to just go through the pictures. And I remember one picture that stuck inside my head forever, in a day, all the way up to today. And it was a picture of me and my brother in the front room of our grandma's house. Because when we were little, my mom used to go to work. My dad he was stationed somewhere, and my grandma used to watch us. So at the church, I guess, my mama took this picture of us. And I remember we had on our church suit. We had these big giant afros, and we had these hard church shoes, man. And the picture stuck in my head because it was one of them times that we were tight. We were a tight knit family. And to this day, I miss my little brother. I really do. We grew apart. And as we grew apart, along came other situations that turned into conditions. And, we were separated for odd reasons. And when I was taken by the state because of child abuse, neglect, physical. But when the state tried to place me back home, I noticed that me and him, we wasn't tight no more. We had grew apart. And I think that there was this collection of wrongdoings that was kind of placed on me as a child. He bad in school, he bad at home, he always acting up, on and on and on. But we grew apart. And I remember I was taken back again by the state because I was being bad. And I was put inside a place called Richard Young Hospital in Omaha, Nebraska. And the things that was taking place in my life was things that was subjecting me to believing that I could just be bad now. I ain't got to worry about getting whippings by my mom and dad because I could just run to these folks in the state. get placed here, placed there, placed in a hospital, placed institutions, place. Them places soon became jail cells, prison. There were still placements. There were displacements that even wedged a bigger, a bigger misconception of parenting by people. The thing that I got used to was two things. One was running. Two, running to a place to hide. Three, I'm going to add on, which was running to a place to hide after I've done wrongdoing. I started to learn how to hurt people. Matter of fact, I didn't feel right unless you felt wrong. I didn't feel right unless I can make you feel wrong. That started to turn into like using drugs as I got older. It started running into me facing me now. I couldn't blame nobody. But I started to inherit this distorted way of thinking where I felt like if I ran, then I was bad. That turned into me always having to prove myself when I got older and I started going through treatments. Now, we're talking about from the age of 11, and I fast forward Joe up to 55. And I recall times that I would go to jail, times that when I would see older guys, when I'm like 18, 19, they're like 50, 40 something years old. And I would always say to myself, man, that's not gonna be me. Look at this old cat. He old and he's still kicking for no reason. What I mean by kicking is he's still alive for no reason. Once I started that type of thinking, it kind of wedged a big space between me being able to process what's right and process when I'm wrong. Soon as I got older, around, I'd say about 40 something years old, I started using drugs. And I started out with crack. Inside Mason City, Iowa, I had this plug named Cubs from Minneapolis, Minnesota. And I was able to muster up enough money to go get ounces from this guy for $900. And I would shoot back down to Mason City and I would make my sales. Well, once I started messing with the females, I learned that it was easy to mess with females that had low self-esteem or no self-esteem. I started learning that they were easy to talk to, and I started feeding them crack. Well, as you know, like I know, things happen when you do drugs. When you do drugs, you start losing formation of your cortex. You start losing the whole sense of what you see, hear, smell, touch, and taste. You start getting into other situations. And sooner or later, I started doing crack. I started with, rolling up what they call blunts, marijuana and crack together. And I would have what they call partying with my female. My addiction started progressing to where I started smoking $20 worth of crack. Then Then I started smoking half an 8 ball worth of crack. Then I started smoking 8 balls. And I would smoke this crack. I would smoke these 8 balls within 6, 7 hours. And I started isolating. I started pushing out reality. And I was not making sense in my decision making. Sooner or later, after doing time, I believe in 2013, I was living in South Omaha at one of the boarding rooms. I learned, you just pay by week, or you know what I'm saying, you pay every 2 weeks or whatever. And I ran into this man, white guy, at a temp service. And he was running the temp service. But I noticed he was helping a lot of people that was struggling with their rent. So I met this man. And I believe he told me what my problem was. I didn't have no self-belief in God. I didn't have no self-belief that there was a creator that seen something in me and wanted me to start having a consistency of faith. I was like anybody else that was strung out on drugs, living in a boarding room, working at a temp service, trying to pay their rent. The problem was I didn't believe him, let alone any white person. I was so stuck inside all my problems was because the white man. All my frustration was because the white man. I totally forgot about how I was taken from the home and my whole family, brown melatonin. I try to reason with myself by smoking more crack. Crack has started to numb me. It started to take away the frustration, the pain, the guilt. It started taking away the shame, but it would only take it away for 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes tops. So I had to do more and more and more and more. After a while, I soon to just forget I had a problem at all. My addiction started simply because I would not listen and I would not let somebody else take the wheel. So I guess if you add it all up together, by the time I progress to meth, it was about 2017. And